welcome back to another episode of Chat About Tay. I'm your host, Bella, and in this episode, I'm going to be chatting about the first two episodes of the End of an Era docuseries. So I just finished watching the first two episodes of the End of an Era docuseries on Disney Plus, which goes through basically it's going to be 6 parts of just behind the scenes stuff about the Eras tour and, everything that went into it. So I'm still kind of processing everything that we got to see in the documentary, but basically I just wanted to kind of talk about like the highlights of the first two episodes because we learned so much about the Eras tour and about Taylor through these two episodes. So one of the interesting things about the documentary is that it's not really linear. They're kind of showcasing different things that was going on during the tour. At the beginning, she did talk about, how she wanted to develop this tour, and this kind of came out because she couldn't perform for Folklore and Evermore and, Lover, like her Lover shows were canceled, and how she hadn't gone on tour in a long time, and that it also kind of came together because of her re-recording, and that she kind of wanted to revisit all of her catalog pretty much. She talks about how the fans were so excited to, get the tickets. She did not talk about, and they did not touch anything with the Ticketmaster situation, which I mentioned in my last episode that I was really hoping that she would discuss that, but I'm not hopeful that she will discuss it in later episodes. So I hope at some point we'll hear more information from Taylor about the Ticketmaster situation, but that just was not discussed. So basically the first episode was them filming her right after the Vienna shows were canceled, and she discusses that they were canceled because there was a targeted terrorist attack, and it just was not safe to have the shows, and those shows were ended up being canceled. And she talks about how this was really devastating for her, and she's reeling from this attack and everything. And then it goes right into her doing her 5 shows in London, and she's also very devastated and very upset because there was a stabbing that happened at a Taylor Swift themed party like a few days before the London shows were supposed to happen. And so she talks about how devastating that was, and she talks about how she's like meeting the family, and then they show some clips of her after she's meeting the families. And she had 5 days for the London shows, so before every single show on that leg of the tour, she was meeting the families of those victims. And so they show her backstage crying, and she's really upset, and she just basically talks a lot about how she does not want the crowd to know that she is sad or she's hurting. And she wants to give every single show her all. She doesn't want to slow down. She doesn't want to, let anybody know that something's wrong with her. And obviously she ended up writing I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, which is kind of about all of that as well. But she talks a lot about that. There was a lot of clips of like her mom comforting her and all of that. And she's basically just trying to, decompress before the concert. And her mom is very, very comforting to her. And so they talk all about that. They just talk about like the fans, how excited she is for them to come to the shows. And she also talks about what she does like after the show. So they showed her getting into the car after the show. Somebody takes off her shoes. She's basically just unwinds. She goes back, she takes a bath, she signs CDs, she gets food, and then she said she doesn't really fall asleep until like 4 a.m., which is like crazy. The first episode is kind of just talking about like how this came together and kind of gearing up for like all the tour and stuff. Before I get a little bit too ahead of myself, the documentary actually opens with her giving a speech to all of her dancers and everybody before the final show of the Eras tour. And she just talks about how, magical this was, and it was the biggest challenge that they've had, and that they performed all these shows, and that they've made people so happy. And it was just a really nice, like, sweet talk that she was giving to all of them. So that was like how it opened up. And then it went into talking about what I was just mentioning with creating and everything like that, and then the terrorist attacks as well. And then these are some quotes from that speech that she gave. I think about every single one of you as little kids. I think about the moment that you decided that dancing was your calling, and the moment that you saw a band and thought, man, I want to save up for an instrument. Every single one of us has picked professions that categorically people for the majority of time tell us you shouldn't do. And you have to love the thing so much that you override 85 to 95% of the advice you are given along the way by oftentimes people that respect people you trust, people in the field. Everyone in dance, everyone in music will tell everyone younger, if there's anything else you can do, to do that. She's basically just mentioning all of that and that, she's proud of them and she was happy that they chose to do this with her. And when she goes into discussing, creating the Eras Tour, she basically says that she wants to overserve the fans. She wants to give them so many songs and, she wants to have the production be very different and just everything just be elevated. And she says that she actually started like training for the concert like 6 months before this tour started. So, really just like training her body, making sure that she can actually do this. And then another really big part of the first episode was because this is showing clips of the 5 shows that she had in London. So a big part of this episode was Ed Sheeran backstage with her because he performed with her during the first London show. And she really wanted to have him come out, not just because like they're friends and everything, but because she thought this would be like something uplifting for the fans after, something so horrible happened. So they showed him and her backstage practicing the songs and just kind of talking about everything. And it's just really cool to see them work together and like collaborate. And they're not just like friends, like they're just like they're musical partners in a sense. Like it's really, really cool. And so they do this big mashup and he just talks about how he's, so happy to be there. And, he thinks this is going to be great. And they show some clips of him on stage with her and everything. Another part of the documentary was we got to see a little bit of a phone call with Taylor and Travis. And this was, I believe, on the way to the stadium. And she's talking about how, their jobs are kind of similar. And this was part of the conversation was in the trailer and everything. But they're just talking about, how, oh, he's like, I don't know how you do this. And she's like, well, I don't know how you do it. Like, you're always working and I'm working and, I perform in front of people, you perform in front of people and stuff too. So that was very cute. And yeah, it was cool just to see like personal moments of her, not just like her talking about the show or clips of her on stage and everything. It was a lot of like personal, and we kind of got to see more of a glimpse into her like behind the scenes life, kind of like what we did with the Miss Americana documentary. But this is obviously just all about the Eras Tour. And then going back to her discussing the terrorist attack and everything, and she's just talking about how it's her job just to not show these emotions on stage. And, she has to be able to perform. And for, 3 hours, like she just has to kind of be on autopilot and just go and do it and not let anything outside of the concert bother her. And then she can, deal with it mentally and emotionally, like after the concert. And it's really hard to be in that mindset and to take yourself out of a mindset like that. But, she has to do it. And she gives this little metaphor of, she said, it's like kind of like if you were a pilot and you're supposed to fly somewhere and you don't want the people on the plane to know that you're scared and that you don't know if you can land the plane, but like everybody on the plane just has to put their faith in you to get it done. And you as the pilot need to be able to figure it out. And that's like the little metaphor that she was giving. And I think it's just kind of was an interesting insight into just her. And, we've heard her say, oh, this is hard. I have to do it even with a broken heart or whatever. But actually like seeing that is different. And then Ed was also, when they were talking, he mentioned like, I think people forget that you're a human being. And she's like, yeah, they don't, realize that. And a lot of people kind of forget that. And then she also was saying, oh, after these 5 shows, I have a 2-month break. And he was like, oh, are you going to just go to New York? Or where are you going to go? And she literally says, I want to go somewhere where no one will find me because I don't want to feel like a caged animal, because she feels like she's been hunted by all these people. And I thought that was like kind of sad. But I mean, I totally get what she's talking about. Everybody's just constantly following her and stuff. And she just needs to be alone and by herself. So then the second episode was mostly about her adding the Tortured Poets Department set into the show. And then she also has a lot of information about her backup dancers as well. And she said when she was first developing the Eras Tour, she really wanted to have like a really good choreographer. And so she said she actually reached out to Emma Stone, who is an actress. She's very good friends with Taylor Swift. And she's been in a lot of like movies where they have dance numbers. And so she asked Emma like, hey, who do you recommend for choreographers for this? And she said, you need to work with Mandy Moore. And Mandy Moore, I've mentioned her in a couple previous episodes with her choreographing the Fate of Ophelia music video. But Mandy Moore said that she, obviously she said yes to the job, but she was more experienced with doing movies and, TV shows and that kind of stuff. But she said she totally understands why Taylor wanted somebody like her, because she wanted to elevate her dancing and everything that was going on with the tour. And she didn't want it to feel just like everything else. She wanted it to be so elevated. And you kind of need somebody who knows knows how to, do big choreography numbers and work in that kind of scale. So that makes sense why she picked Mandy to be her choreographer. And then we also have some clips and some interviews with two of her dancers. So we have Cam Saunders, who is known for being the one who does the improv during We Are Never Getting Back Together, and then Amanda Balin as well, who she started off as just being a stand-in for Taylor during rehearsals because she was a dancer for many, many years. She performed on Glee, she performed for Lady Gaga, she went on tour with all these different artists, and she said that her body just kind of like was run down after a while, and so she's been like retired from dancing for a long time, so she was just more doing behind the scenes stuff. And like I said, she was originally just supposed to be like a stand-in for Taylor, but she basically said that like they were kind of giving a chance. Like Taylor was like, "Do you think she would want to like dance with us?" And so Amanda not only was doing stand-in and being her lead dancer and everything, but she ended up actually performing during the Eras tour. So she kind of got like a second chance. And so with Cam, he was talking about how he has been dancing forever and he's always been, loving dance and loving performing, but he was always told that he needed to lose weight, and he always kind of felt bad. And then he said he got this very cryptic email saying that they couldn't disclose who the artist was, but they wanted him to come in to audition for a tour. And his brother is actually a football player, and I believe his brother is on the Chiefs. I think that was the uniform they showed. I'm bad at football references and all of that stuff. I think his brother is on the Chiefs. And so he told him, he's like, "I need to do this audition. Like, please, can you like buy me a plane ticket so I can go to this audition?" Because he didn't have really any money prior. And so he goes, and Mandy talks about how they just immediately loved him. They loved his energy. They just thought he was so great, and they had to have him for the tour. And he just talks about how this changed his life. And they have a really sweet moment with him and his mom backstage at one of those shows. He's just telling her how much the support that she gave him and his brother really fueled him to be where he is now. And it was just a really sweet moment. And I thought that was like really cute. And then they talk a lot about adding the Tortured Poets Department set. So she talks about how, when she was going to do the next leg of the tour, she needed to add the Tortured Poets Department. And she thought it was like kind of a risk, wasn't sure if this was going to pay off. And, adding a whole new set, she was afraid that people might think it was just a little weird. And she was worried that people weren't going to like the new version of the show, which obviously everyone loved it. And they just show her backstage giving off different ideas for the choreography and, the run of show for the new section of the tour, which I thought was like really cool as well. Another huge thing that they had in this episode was handing out bonuses. So Taylor says that basically as the tour grosses more money, she is able to give her crew, dancers, everyone who works on the shows, she's able to give them bonuses. They did not really disclose like exactly the amount, but there were a couple of like articles that were popped up on screen that kind of gave like a guesstimate of how much money she gave. And I think over the course of all of the shows, she gave $197 million in bonuses, which is just crazy. And this is obviously like money that's really helpful to all these people. And so basically when she wrote a handwritten note to every single person that she gave these bonuses to, and this was like hundreds of people, and she literally wax sealed every single one of them as well. So that's just crazy. And so she goes around, she gives them to everyone, and she says, "Bonus day is so important because it's setting a precedent with the Eras tour, and this is really important to me because people who work on the road, if the tour grosses more, they get more of a bonus, and these people just work so hard and they are the best at what they do. So every single person on crew, I've handwritten them a note. It took me a couple weeks, but it's fun to write the notes. It's fun to think about everybody's lives that they're going to go back to and the time off that they're going to have and the kids that they haven't seen because they've been away for months. And just making that worthwhile for them is really, it just feels like Christmas morning when you finally get to see thank you." So they show her backstage with her dancers. Cam reads off the note. She said this is the same note for everybody. And then the amount of money with the bonus is like blurred out and everything. But I could imagine that it's probably $100,000 to $500,000 of a bonus for every person, which is crazy. So that was a really cool thing. And I think people forget how generous Taylor is with her money. And, she is a billionaire, but she gives so much of her money to people that need it. And she treats her staff and her, crew and everything just with so much care and love. So I thought that was really cool to show. And then they go into a lot about the choreography for the Tortured Poets Department section and how Mandy and Amanda were working together. And what they do is they kind of come up with stuff and they have the dancers rehearse it a little bit and then they show Taylor, and Taylor will say if she likes it, if she doesn't, if she wants to change things. And it's really a collaborative effort. And I think I've mentioned that before, is that, a lot of times when people are in charge of things, like Taylor's in charge of all of this, sometimes it's like it's their way or the highway kind of thing. And Taylor's not like that. She hires these people to do their jobs and to do the choreography because she believes in them and she knows that they're going to do a good job. But also when she has suggestions, they're able to work with her. So I just thought it was a really cool, like, it just showcased how like kind Taylor is and just how like smart she is, but she also like respects the people that she's working with, which I think is cool. And she also said, Mandy knows how to approach teaching me choreography from a lyrical perspective. I don't do 8 counts. I learn based on what syllable of the lyric I'm attaching the movement to. And I can't really learn any other way. I've tried, which I really appreciate that because I am a terrible dancer. But I feel like when I'm dancing, I kind of do dance more towards the lyrics and stuff. So I thought that was a kind of interesting thing that she had said. That also just shows how good of a choreographer Mandy is because she's working with Taylor. She's not like, oh, well, you have to do 8 counts. This is how dancing is. She's like, no, well, if Taylor's not going to be able to learn like that, we're going to do it in a different way. So I thought that was really cool as well. So after they go into the choreography section, she just talks about how happy she is that, her fans are just loving the Eras Tour and that she just really wants to make sure that she puts on the best show for everyone. And while they were learning the choreography, there was an entire it was a pretty long portion of the episode where they were doing the choreography for the Tortured Post Department set, and then they also showed like almost like the whole rehearsal of when Florence Welsh came to perform Florida with her during one of the nights in England. And she basically just like what I was saying, that Mandy was choreographing the dances with Amanda, and then they were showing it to Taylor, and she gave some suggestions, and then Florence showed up. I don't know if this was all on the same day or not. And then Florence shows up, and she's showing her the set and showing her the choreography, and they kind of just work together. And like I was saying earlier, it's really like a full collaboration, and she gives her like pointers, and Florence had never in any of her concerts used like a lift, so that's like when an artist is like underneath the stage and then they get lifted up like Taylor does in her shows. And so Florence said that she had never done that before, and she was like really excited about it. So it was cool because they showed her under the stage like during the concert, and they actually filmed a couple portions of Taylor under the stage as well. And you can see like there's like people backstage like sitting under the stage and giving her cues to like come in and everything. So it was just really cool, and it was cool to see like not just Taylor's process with all of that, but it's cool just to kind of see like other artists and how they were reacting to being part of this really cool thing, which is the Eras Tour. And then yeah, she just finishes out the episode again with just how happy she is with the tour, and she says, there's a feeling I have of such pride and satisfaction because when I leave the Eras Tour, I never wonder that. There's just like this magic in the air, all these particles of shimmer and glitter and confetti and girlhood and friendship bracelet beads. And that's where the episode ends. So I'm excited to see what the other episodes are going to be. Like I said, there are 4 more episodes going to be out, and then I believe the Torture Poets Department set is already out on Disney Plus now, so that is available to watch. And I haven't watched that yet, but I will. So basically, they released the final Eras Tour show that's on Disney Plus, and it has the Torture Poets Department set in it. So we have the original Eras Tour, and then we have the kind of redone Eras Tour as well on Disney Plus for us to watch. So that's it for this episode. I hope you learned something about Taylor Swift and her documentary. I hope it inspired you to watch the documentary yourself. And like always, stay safe, stay classy, and I'll chat again with you soon. Goodbye. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Spotify, Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. See you there.